again, no one solution, but the quicker you're able to identify there's going to be a problem or know that one is happening, you can come up with a lot more solutions, and you don't need to figure it all out on your own.
I always say that most businesses fail not because of the economy, not because of luck, not because of anything but behavior. The founder, the entrepreneur does not know how to manage his finances well or her finances well. And so 9 out of 10 businesses fail not because of luck or the economy, but because of behavior for the most part. And that is because a lot of entrepreneurs I noticed would get a fat paycheck right off the bat when they make a sale. So I want to know, how much should you really pay yourself as an entrepreneur when, like you, Tracy, have a 3-year-old, if for example I have a 3-year-old startup, how much should I get from what I'm making? How much should I pay myself?
So the first thing that needs to be assessed is your profitability. Do you actually make money on the products or services that you sell? And I can tell you that 80 to 85% of the entrepreneurs that I work with, when we start working together, they are losing money on most products or services. So that's where you've got to start. So if you're losing money on everything that you do, where would the money come from to pay yourself this big paycheck? And often entrepreneurs get confused. They see money in their bank account and they just take it out, even though that money is needed to cover those cash flow needs in the future, like we talked about. So my first step is I always encourage a deep dive on pricing. Let's start with the basics. How much does it actually cost you to deliver this product or service? And make sure if there's an element of labor, whether it's you or a team member, how much time does it take? And then how much does that cost? If there's materials, then we've got to tack on appropriate percentage for overhead, those things you've got to pay whether or not you make a sale, like rent, like internet, insurance. And then you would have ideally a profit margin. So I suggest starting from that bottom up approach, figure out what you think your ideal price is. Then you got to compare it to the market. What will they pay? You might want to charge $100 for a beaded bracelet, whereas the market will only pay you $2. So you've got to see where is that disconnect. I encourage entrepreneurs before they even open their doors to do a business plan and to figure out if this is going to work from a financial standpoint before you outlay any time, any money. And most entrepreneurs are super keen to get going right away. They don't want to take the time to do that, but it is so worth it. So if anybody's contemplating a new business who's listening, please do that. It will save you so much headache in the long run. Because if you find out that it's not going to be profitable, you can pivot your idea. You can maybe target a different client base who will pay more for what you're offering. And so it gives you all kinds of options again. The way that you can get paid from your business, there's 3 basic ways. You can be on a regular salary, you can take dividends, which is after the profit, or if you've loaned money to the business, you can repay that shareholder loan. They all have different tax implications. But the bottom line is if you're not making money, there is no money for you to get paid. And realistically, to your point, Sean, in the first couple of years, unless you've really aced that business plan, unless you've got that client really lined up and you're able to start very strong, you're not going to be taking a significant amount of pay. So thinking that you are and potentially making commitments to your family about the vacations you're going to go on, maybe the car you're going to have, the house you're going to live in, I would refrain from making those kinds of promises, because it does take money to start the business, and then you do need to put money back into it to grow it. If you want to grow your team, if you want to grow your sales, we've talked about cash flow, but growth is really hungry. It needs cash to fuel it. I almost think about it, and I'm going to date myself, but when I was a kid, we used to play Pac-Man. So you'd have Pac-Man coming and eating those little bubbles. Same thing with growth. It eats up cash. So you can't just take out everything and expect your business to grow. It just won't work. And so basic math, if you have sales of $10, your expenses are 11, you're already at -1. There's no room for you to take out a lot of money for your salary or your pay.
And wow, 80 to 85% is at that situation.
That I'm working with, yeah. When
Right.
they're coming to me.
That's mind blowing. I mean, wow. Wow. That's just crazy.
And again, it comes back to attention on the numbers. And until I start asking questions, most of them didn't actually analyze their pricing. So it is a brand new thing to them. And that's all about getting in touch with the numbers, knowing your numbers, especially if you're going to launch a new product or service. Let's make sure it's going to be profitable before you do it.
hmm Speaking of, I am about to launch a business. It's an e-commerce website, so I am going to have to look at my numbers. But yeah, it is hard work, but you have to do it. That's why we call it a business, and that's why it's not for everyone. And I remember early on, I was paying myself even less than one of my employees. So I paid
Mm-hmm.
this guy more than what I take home at the end of the month. And that's because, as the entrepreneur, sometimes you just have X amount left after meeting payroll, paying your taxes, paying rent, etc. And that's it. And also on the growth side, that is very true. When we scaled up to 30 plus people and we had to move into a new office, we had to pay the renovation. So there's another capital infusion that went in the growth. Very, very true. And you cannot use your safety net for that. You have to make sure you save up for growth as well. There are problems that entrepreneurs face when it comes to paying themselves first from their business. So, and I'm imagining it going this way, but Tracy, what am I gonna live off of if you're telling me that I cannot get this much X amount from what my business is making every month? And I imagine that might be some of the concerns that have been brought your way. What do you usually tell them?
Sometimes it's a hard conversation in that can the business be profitable? I've had a lot of conversations, certainly since COVID hit, that while there were a lot of government supports out there, if your business wasn't doing well when things were good, does it make sense to borrow more money? Is that going to be a good option for you? And so sometimes it's having that critical look, that hard conversation. I can't make this work well, or this just isn't a good idea anymore. And can I pivot and do something differently? Or should I be considering closing the business? Maybe I should be getting a job. Maybe I should start a different business. And so having those hard conversations, it may require you doing a little bit of potentially side work, consulting work. Certainly, most entrepreneurs have the ability to do something a little bit different on the side than is their core business. And sometimes it may require that they do that. If they have a spouse, if the spouse wasn't working, they may need to work or work more. Again, maybe potentially money from friends and family. I usually don't encourage that route because I think that when you're an entrepreneur, you are taking risk and you understand that. But you should never be borrowing money from friends and family when you're not absolutely sure when you can pay it back. And most of them don't have it to give you without the expectation of it coming back. And so you can harm those relationships in the process too. How can you scale back your life? How can you make arrangements with some of your creditors if you need to, even if it's on a temporary basis? When you mentioned your new business, Sean, certainly something that like that is going to have a lot of heavy infrastructure up front. So there's going to be a lot of outlay as you build up your client base. So it's a little bit different, and you're going to need to be prepared for, if you think it's going to take 6 months based on your projections, maybe that's really 12. And so before you launch it, you're going to make sure you have more cash reserves available to get you through that time. So again, no one solution, but the quicker you're able to identify there's going to be a problem or know that one is happening, you can come up with a lot more solutions, and you don't need to figure it all out on your own. Certainly work with a financial planner, financial coach. If things are trending really negatively, you probably want to talk to an insolvency trustee and see what is the best thing for me, because you may be able to stop paying the creditors that you owe and come up with a different plan.
Which brings us to the next question. And you mentioned when COVID hit, maybe and your business was not doing well in the good times, it's not going to do well during this time when things are really bad. When there are programs out there, government programs that allow you to loan X amounts of money. I know at least in the US they launched that program and marketed it. Here, I'm not so sure. I haven't heard of any, but when should you, in fact, get into that program and get that loan to help your business out?
Certainly in Canada, the government came out with many different programs to support entrepreneurs. They revised them as time went on because they were finding that some categories of businesses and some ways that people were paying themselves were falling through the cracks. So for instance, and this has really highlighted the need for me to tell my clients, like, as soon as you can get on payroll and get a regular salary, you need to do so, because some of the conditions for some of the loans were that you have a payroll of X amount. So if you weren't paying yourself consistently, you couldn't get a loan. It was very interesting in Canada. I found that in the personal side and the business side, people were saying, oh, I'm not going to apply for that. I'm going to leave it for people who are more deserving, which I find very interesting. And that comes back to how people think about money and kind of their beliefs around it. But my advice has been throughout and continues to be, if you meet the qualifications for the programs, take the money. Some of it is forgivable after some amount of time. A lot of it is interest-free. You will need to make the repayment, but even if you don't have an immediate need for it today, get it, start your emergency fund with it. We don't know how long things are going to go on. We don't know what's going to be happening. And I've been really pleased to see so many entrepreneurs who've either pivoted their business, changed their offering to be able to deliver something that is needed now, because there's a lot of new services needed now that everybody's working at home, and healthcare is such an issue. The other thing is, can you make an investment in your business with that money if the future looks quite bright for you, depending on the industry? A couple clients I know have taken those loan proceeds and been able to grow their business. So it's not doom and gloom for everyone, but it is about, what are my numbers? How am I doing? Does my current plan look like it's going to be successful based on what I know is going on and the uncertainty? If not, how can I make a change and adapt so that I can survive this, and not only just survive, but thrive and come out of it stronger? So there's lots of great evidence, but if you meet the criteria, apply for the money. If you don't have an immediate need, save it. So even if you just have it to pay back when you need to, one of the loans that was offered, it was a $40,000 loan for entrepreneurs. If you pay back 30, you can have 10 forgiven. That's 10,000 free money. So
Wow.
yeah. So as taxpayers, we're all going to be paying for that over the long run. So if you qualify, get those funds and use them either as your emergency safety net, use it to grow the business, but just so that you can be prepared, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Right, right. Wow, good to know. I mean, that's amazing. I could just hope that our government's half as competitive as yours. But yeah, moving on. Now, if you could give, and this is we're moving to the last question, and we have had so much value, just learning so much, especially for the new entrepreneur or the struggling entrepreneur. If you guys are listening in, I hope you have learned a lot from Tracey. I wish I could have listened to a podcast like this when I was starting out. I had certainly no idea about cash flow way back when. I had no safety net, no emergency fund, and I bootstrapped from, I don't know, like, was that? Yeah, that was like $25. That's what I used to start up, just a website. And then I offered my service there. Thank God it worked out. Now, if you could give Tracey an advice to struggling entrepreneurs out there during this time of crisis, and they are struggling, what would it be?
So again, look at your numbers, understand your financial position, and then make a plan. Get help if you need it. And also be kind to yourself. If you've made some missteps, don't keep beating yourself up about it. Figure out how to go forward and have that hard conversation. Should I be going forward with this? Should I not? And consult people that you need to help you make that decision. At the end of the day, you have to own the decision though. Know the numbers, be accountable, and be kind and forgive yourself if you're making any missteps, so you can carry on and move forward on that financial fitness journey.
Fantastic. And I know that you have something special for our listeners tuning in. I just want to know, where can people find you? And then Take it away.
Absolutely. So we talked about the importance of having regular money meetings, having that dedicated time so that you can increase your financial acumen. So I've got a gift for everybody who's listening and watching. It's a money meeting agenda. So if you head over to cashcoach.biz, you can download that and you can get started today, having that first meeting with yourself to go through your numbers. So cashcoach.biz. Best place to reach out to me, and I would love to hear any questions or comments. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Tracey has an E and Bissett has 2 S's and 2 T's, and I would love to hear from everybody listening and love to answer any questions and hear your comments.
And if you guys are tuning in, you can get all of those links in the show notes, and that will help you out instead of just pressing the rewind button and retyping that yourself. Just go to the show notes on leadershipstack.com. You'll find this episode, click on the link, make sure to check it out. Do yourself a favor, check out her podcast as well. Her podcast is Young Money, and the URL is sheonyoungmoney.com. Is that right?
Yeah, you can find it on LinkedIn too, or my website, visitfinancialfitness.com. Easy way to find it.
Fantastic. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much, Tracey, for giving us your thoughts, your expertise, and your advice for entrepreneurs, leaders, and managers out there. We had a great show.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was really fun.
Thank you.